Okay, let's get into the Odyssey books 3 and 4. This will probably be the last time I do a video just on 2 chapters. I think the next one will be 5, 6, 7, 8, because that will get us right to where Odysseus is about to tell all his big adventures that he has. And that covers chapters 9, 10, 11, 12. Then from there, I'll probably break it up even more. That'll get us into the last part of the book. So, all right, but for now, let's do books 3 and 4. Book 3 is basically um, Telemachus going to Pylos. He needs to talk to Nestor to ask him what happened to his dad. Then he needs to go to Sparta to talk to Menelaus in book 4 to find out what happened to his dad. That's pretty much these 2 books. Let's cover the characters quickly. So we already know Telemachus. He's going to ask Nestor what happened to his father at Pylos. Don't forget that Mentor is Athena disguised as Mentor. She's a goddess that's directly helping him as he goes on his adventures. She gives him the courage to talk to Nestor, not just like gives him a pep talk, but literally like cast some kind of spell on him that just gives him courage. So the gods really directly affect the characters. We'll get back into that. And then there's Pisistratus, who is Nestor's son. He's the first person to meet them at Pylos. There's a lot of interaction that goes on, and then he actually accompanies Telemachus uh, to meet Menelaus at Sparta, right? Okay, and Lacedaemon, which is Sparta. Uh, and then we already know Nestor is the king of Pylos. Poseidon, I just wanted to remind you that if I say Poseidon in your book, it's Neptune. You're like, hey, there's no Poseidon. Yeah, it's the same person. And then Agamemnon is mentioned in the stories from the Bard, right? And other people. Actually, I don't even know if the Bard talked about him, but certainly he's mentioned. And then the Aegisthus, killing Agamemnon with the help of Clytemnestra, and then Orestes killing Aegisthus. That's already been mentioned in this book, and it's mentioned several times in these 2 chapters. So that keeps coming up. That's why we researched that before. But in the story, Agamemnon stays behind to sacrifice to the gods. It didn't work out for him, but but we'll get into that. And then Odysseus, he's only mentioned in story. He's going to come back. This whole book's mostly about him, but he doesn't really join the book until book 5. But in this book, in one of the stories, he goes back to make peace with Agamemnon, and then is never seen. Well, is not seen of for a while. Menelaus, again, this is only in the story that Nestor tells about what happened to everybody. He's king of Sparta, and he joins Nestor in heading home quickly. So those 2 got home quickly, and Odysseus was left behind. That's ultimately what they find out and what they're able to tell. There's a little bit more, but we'll get to that. But okay, and again, I'm not just going through the plot. Let's just hit the main things here. Certainly, I think we're really driving home the point. And this is a cultural thing because people actually did this, back in the day, and this was such a huge, important part of their culture is to sacrifice the gods, their best animal. And they thought if they did that, they burnt it up, did burnt sacrificing, cut it up in a certain way. It was all very technical. That the gods would appease the gods, and then they would have a good life. So it's in this chapter a lot. Now the people of Pylos this is as soon as they get there, the very first thing. People of Pylos were gathered on the seashore to offer sacrifice of black bulls to Neptune, lord of earthquake, which is Poseidon. As soon as is it Pisistratus? That's why I put that there. meets Telemachus, he says, "Offer a prayer, sir, to King Neptune, for it is his feast that you are joining." So, like, hey, you're welcome to come to the party. Make a sacrifice first. Like, let's put first things first. This is really important, right? It seemed that Menelaus was sailing homeward at once. This is the story that Nestor tells about how he got home. And this displeased Agamemnon, who thought he should wait until he had offered hecatombs to appease the anger of Minerva. So it's not just to make the gods happy. It's, oh, I did something. We won the war against Athena. She's going to be a little bit ticked off, so we better do some burnt sacrifices to try to make her feel better. Somewhere in the book, it actually says, yeah, but there's no use. When the gods make up their minds to do something, you can sacrifice all you want. It's not going to help. But they do it anyway because it's such a big part of their culture. When we reached Tenedos, we offered sacrifices to the god first thing. So the group that went ahead, and you think, oh, shouldn't they be struck down because they didn't offer any sacrifices? No, they did. They just, wanted to get on their way. And as soon as they got where they were going, then they sacrificed to the gods because they know how important it is. Another one, I will offer you in sacrifice a broad-browed heifer, that's a cow of a year old, unbroken, never yet brought by man under the yoke. So it's like, hasn't had any hard labor. It's like perfect condition. It's been brought up just to be sacrificed. I will gild her horns and offer her up to you in sacrifice. I can make it look perfect, and then boom, you can have it. Thus did he pray, and Minerva heard his prayer, right? This, of course, is right after she kind of reveals herself and flies away. So they're like, oh, well then. But, not only is this showing that they sacrifice a lot, but also the gods do respond positively to it. I wish first and foremost to propitiate the great goddess Minerva, who manifested herself visibly to me during yesterday's festivities. So again, especially if a goddess or a god is going to show themselves and let them be known to you, you best, sacrifice. So this is a lesson, right? This is a theme essentially in the book that, hey, this is an important thing, and everybody at the time would have known that, but they just reinforce these themes through their storytelling. So that's why you see it so often. Then we're going to talk about a bunch of things we've already talked about for chapters 1 and 2. So this is just more of the same things I already mentioned, but we're seeing it again and again. So certainly the importance of hospitality with both Nestor and Menelaus. They both say, come in and have a big feast and join us, and we're not talking like one or two people. This is like 20 men. Come on in, let me feed you, let me take care of you. Then you tell us who you are and why you're here. It's super important that you welcome people in, you're super hospitable, and then, get down to business. And then storytelling is a means of communication. We already saw a bard, telling stories, singing songs in this first or second chapter. But it's important, in storytelling, there is a bard very briefly in chapter 2 or chapter 3. But also, this is how they communicate. Like, oh, you want to know what happened to your father? Let me tell a story. It's not just here's what happened to him. It builds up the culture. It's also a means of entertainment. And they tell stories that are important in the culture. That's why I mean it builds up the culture. What I mean by that. So if you tell these stories over and over and over again, these are stories you can be proud of, our great heroes and that kind of thing. So that's why storytelling is such a huge thing. And you're like, why do we have to read these giant stories that go on and on? It's not really super connected to the plot because of the cultural importance to show like all of these great stories, these great heroes that's reflected in a story that also has great heroes in it. Right? And also it's a reminder that your name will be remembered. So, someone like Aegisthus, he's been mentioned a bunch already. Everyone's going to be talking about him forever because he did this horrible thing in killing Agamemnon. So, man, is that the way you want your name to be remembered? And names were very important back then. Like your whole family is nobody respects them anymore. Loyalty, everything is gone if you screw up. Oh, that family, yeah, we don't like them anymore, right? The gods continue to play an important role in the story. Athena is literally like right there by Telemachus's side, taking care of him, making sure things happen. We talked about how the language that's used in the story. You've got the epic stories within stories. You've got this focus on these important leaders doing these important things and having these great feasts, and everything is so epic and amazing, and wow, wouldn't it be great to be at that table with those people, kind of thing. Long list of things that the servants carry out. You'll see long lists of like presents that are given, like epic, right? Okay, that's pretty much all I got for book 3. So Lacedaemon, we're moving on to Menelaus. At the end of book 3, Pisistratus accompanies Telemachus to Lacedaemon to meet Menelaus. As soon as we get to book 4, Menelaus, there's a big wedding for his daughter and Achilles' son. She's marrying Achilles' son. Of course, Menelaus is king of Sparta. He's also very hospitable, as we talked about. Helen's the queen of Sparta. She helps everyone calm down. We'll get to that. Adothea, I kind of like Adothea better. This is another story within the story. So it's a goddess who makes herself look like Adothea, who's the daughter of Proteus, and she tells him how to get home by using Proteus, and we'll talk about that. Proteus is the old man of the sea. He's, I forgot what they call him, but he's just this, not a god, but he lives underwater and he changes shapes. But we'll get to that. The suitors are a big part of the end of this chapter. Of course, Penelope, Telemachus' mom. We'll get back to her. And then Iphthime, Thyme is Penelope's sister. And Athena visits Penelope in Penelope's dream in the form of Iphthime. So that's another way that the gods can interact and help people out, calms her down, right? She's very stressed out. Okay, so let's get through all the stuff that's the same, and then we'll cover a couple of different things, and we'll be done. Again, we see more importance of hospitality. Menelaus welcomes them in, feast, and to a wedding, no less. Can you imagine just inviting a bunch of people to a wedding that you don't know? And then tell me why you're here. Storytelling is means of communication, builds up the culture. Same thing, right? They're telling stories to communicate, but also, they talk about the Trojan horse and what all these great heroes and Odysseus, right? So it's building themselves up, building up their culture. Yeah. And then the Proteus starts telling. So we have this story, and in this story, we have Menelaus telling us a story, and in Menelaus' story, we have Proteus who's telling us a story. He mentions Aegisthus and all that kind of thing again. The gods are still continuing to play an important role, not just Athena, but Idothea. And then if Thyme, it's not that she's a god, but that Athena visits Penelope in the form of Thyme, however you pronounce it. So they're directly influencing. So that's the idea. Is like, hey, if you sacrifice for the gods, and they will directly influence your life. The storytelling continues to feel epic, right? We have epic stories within stories, focus on important leaders, do important things. Right? It's all the same stuff, right? And then also we get back to the villains, and same thing. They're very scheming. They're very sneaky. They don't do things like heroes. They're the opposite of heroes. Heroes like directly just face the problems and kill them straight on. The villains are scheming and trying to do things in a very tricky manner. So they think, hey, I know, we can plan an ambush for Telemachus when he comes back. We'll hide at this island. When he comes by, we'll intercept his ship and kill him. So it's very, deceptive. Okay, we have to address, why is everybody crying? And I don't necessarily have a perfect answer for this. Did some research, looked up crying. People from different universities have all kinds of different opinions? Is it because the culture, said it was okay? Is it one article was talking about the storytelling and how it manipulates our expectations of storytelling. Like you can find any number of explanations. But let's go through and take a look. So Menelaus, he says, I often grieve as I sit here in my house for one and all of them. Those are the people who did not necessarily make it back, or he doesn't know what happened to them, who he was fighting with in Troy. At times I cry aloud for sorrow. This is Menelaus, like the king of Sparta, uh, you know, big leader, big feast going on, and he admits, like, I cry out loud. But presently I leave off again, for crying is cold comfort, and one soon tires of it. So, on the one hand, he's saying, oh yeah, I do it all the time, but you can't just sit around and do that all the time. It doesn't give you a lot of comfort. Then we have Menelaus is talking, and the heart of Telemachus yearned as he bethought of him, his father. Tears fell from his eyes, he heard thus mentioned. And nobody makes fun of him. They notice it, like, oh, this is really making this guy upset. By the way, who are you? Right? Um, so this kid who's trying to become a man is not afraid to cry out loud. Then Menelaus is talking about the warriors at Odysseus and the warriors at Trojan horse, and his words set them all weeping. Helen wept, Telemachus wept, so did Menelaus, nor could Pisistratus keep his eyes from filling when he remembered his dear brother Antilochus, whom the son of bright dawn had killed. Um, and Pisistratus does say, he's like, okay, enough of this, right? I am not fond of crying while I'm getting my supper. Like other times, fine, but salt will get in my soup. No, that's not what he says. But he does say that he doesn't like crying. So there's kind of a back and forth, as if it's okay, it's acceptable. Nobody says anything otherwise, but there's still this manliness that you know, I try not to, but they all admit of doing it. So is it cultural? It's hard to find cultural records of that kind of thing. It wouldn't surprise me. I find it interesting that this is, the masculinity here is different than it seems to be now. You don't see a lot of heroes, like crying and stuff. Although that's changed a lot since I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was like, nope, our men are manly men, Now, you might see Captain America shedding a tear here and there. So it's interesting, culture's changing a little bit, but going back a couple thousand years, this is how it was, and it was more acceptable. So that's all I wanted to point out there. And then this is one that used to be in the original presentation. I don't know why that got taken out. But one of the things about the epic is that you have the invocation of the muse. The author is getting help from the gods who is helping him or her tell the story. And the narration is supposed to be totally objective. It's not, there's no judgment. You'll find that some people, specifically Odysseus, does some pretty shady things. And you're like, wait a second, double standards, sexist, there's all kinds of things where you go, wait, that doesn't seem very heroic. But the narrator never gives any judgment about it, doesn't say he's a good or bad person, just says, here's what he did. This is what he did, and then moving on. And the one I'm going to bring up here is a little bit minor. I don't even know if this would have been considered shady. I think nowadays we would find this shady. But when Helen helps everyone out when they're all crying, it says, then Jove's daughter brought daughter Helen bethought her of another matter. She drugged the wine with an herb that banishes all care, sorrow, and ill humor. Whoever drinks wine thus drugged cannot shed a single tear all the rest of the day, not even though his father and mother, both of them, drop down dead, or he sees a brother or son hewn in pieces before his very eyes. So on the one hand, it's a very powerful drug, right? Like you see your parents mow down and you're like, I mean, it seems like it takes away all emotion, which is very powerful. Also, she's drugging their drinks. Like this, I don't know if this would be considered like, oh, that was so nice of her to do that. Nowadays, someone does this. I don't care if it helps anyone. This would not be okay. But again, look at the narration. You know, she thought of something, she drugged them. This is what would happen. Moving on. It's all very objective. It's not. It's like, okay, here's what she did. It doesn't say like, she was so evil, or oh, this is such a great thing. This is just what she did. And you'll see this throughout, especially when we get to Odysseus. There's going to be some moments where you're like, ooh, that doesn't sit right with me. So, you just have to remember different time, different culture, things what was okay was different, than it is now. That's all I got for you this one. I think things will move a little bit quicker. There seems to be, as we go along, especially in the very end, more plot and less kind of analysis and stuff to talk about. So, all right, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, as always, just let me know. All right, thank you for listening. We will see you next time.